I should have. Hello, everyone. So welcome to the She Can Initiative webinar series. How's everyone doing? Can you guys chat? How are you doing? How has your week been? How are you feeling? You can comment in the chat section. Hello, hello, hello. Nobody? Oh, thank you. Hi, Shay. Hi, Obiageli. Good to hear. Hello. Oh, Shay, same here. I'm excited as well. Hi, Noku. Good afternoon. Hi, Juliet. Good afternoon. Hi, it's Simihe. I hope I got it right. Hello, everyone. So we'll just go ahead and start. Sorry, I'll put my video back on. So my name is Ijeoma Adesuwa, and I'm the founder of Kobikam Africa. So we've had this webinar series throughout the month of February, and this is our last one. So yay! And yeah, thank you to everyone that has joined so far. So basically, in a nutshell, Kobikam Africa is building an ecosystem for African women to enable them thrive in business, the workplace, and society. So just looking at our mission is to encourage, equip, enhance, and elevate women in society. So we act to support African women in business, the workplace, and community to seamlessly realize their potential. And one of the key elements of Kobikam Africa is the She Can initiative, which is a platform for entrepreneurs and female entrepreneurs, obviously. So we provide coaching as well as toolkits to enable women succeed. So this webinar series has been going on throughout February, and this is our last one. And we have two amazing speakers. We have one of them on now, Charis Udeh, and I'll just introduce her shortly.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for joining.
Okay, so just quickly, Charis Udeh is an entrepreneur and management consultant, more commonly known as the CEO founder of KYALLI, a personal care company that is on a mission to rid the world of superficial skin treatments. Before launching KYALLI, she worked at Ernst & Young's corporate finance and advisory practices, delivering complex transformation programs across power and energy, oil and gas, and other asset-intensive industries. She also worked at Barclays Bank PLC in the Office of the Chief of Staff, leading strategy and operations. And then finally at the Boston Consulting Group, running complex tech transformation programs. She has a BSc in IT and Business Management from Queen Mary University in London and an MSc in Business Innovation with Entrepreneurship and Innovation Management from Birkbeck, University of London. And she also has a diploma from the London School of Economics and Political Science in Corporate Finance and Strategy. Since the launch of KYALLI, she has been featured in many notable magazines and platforms, including Forbes, Forbes Africa, Suitcase, Elle, Cosmopolitan, Chic, Pop Sugar, Birdie, Irish Sattler, and many more. So thank you, we're excited to have you on.
Thank you, IJ. I'm just listening to you introduce me, and I was wondering who you were talking about. I think it's still quite humbling to hear such an introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining the webinar. I'll start by saying I want to try and make this conversation as informal as possible. And please feel free to come with your questions. I'm by no means an entrepreneur expert. I think from my quick biography, you can hear I did most of my career in corporate and started my entrepreneurial journey only last year. So the aim of this conversation or webinar is to really speak to everyone who is looking to start their journey or is early in their journey about what I've done so far to, I suppose, achieve the success, still growing in success, but the success I've achieved so far. And I think from different pillars, especially, I suppose, our strategic use of marketing and public relations to get our brand story out there and our brand into the world, I suppose. So to start with, as IJ said, I've spent about 10 years, maybe more, in corporate London. I think for any Nigerian, I'm of Nigerian descent. I schooled in Nigeria, came to London to finish my A-levels in university. But for most people of Nigerian descent, when you come to London, you have a pretty much clear-cut trajectory, which is you go to a good university and then you find a good job in the city. And I was no different. I got a job in corporate finance. I'm not really a numbers girl, so I quickly moved into advisory at Ernst & Young, which is one of the big four. Did that for a few years, and then I moved to Barclays Bank. I loved my job. It was very fun, very fast-paced, but there was always something missing. After Barclays, I thought I missed consulting quite a bit. I went to Boston Consulting Group, which for most people in consulting, you'll see that as a privilege to get the opportunity to work in both the big four and the big three. I think in a very short space of time, I was privileged to be able to work in both the big four and big three. However, I've always had a longing for more. I had worked with a few friends to try and start businesses here and there, but there was always some sort of misalignments with them. So it was never fruitful or never took off. I think 2 years ago, I went for a dinner with a few friends. Nothing fancy, usual dinner like most people do with their friends before COVID got us stuck at home. And we're all having a sort of introspective conversation. And we all asked ourselves, if we weren't doing what we were doing, what will we be doing in life to make us very fulfilled? And I said, I'll definitely be running a business. And a friend of mine asked her, why aren't you running a business? And I thought, well, I don't know. I'm working in BCG. Why would I want to run a business? And she said, well, you complain quite a bit, especially with the traveling, because I spent most of my life living in hotels. I loved my jobs. I wouldn't say I was fully fulfilled, but they're not bad companies. They're actually amazing companies. And I do suggest anyone who wants to start a career should start in any of those three firms because they're pretty exceptional. But the conversation continued, and I wondered why I hadn't actually got into entrepreneurship. I went back home and continued to ponder on this thought as to what was actually holding me back, and if anything was holding me back. I researched, I read, I went on Google and found this something called a fear assessment on a website called doitscare.com. With my inquisitive self, I ran into the website, I did a quick assessment, and I saw that my results showed I typical woman and imposter syndrome. I feel fulfilled by following the rules. I'm people pleasing. And I thought, I'm not a people pleaser. What do you mean by people pleasing? So I took it upon myself to face my fears. Facing my fears sounded daunting to me at the time, but I don't know if any of you can relate to being afraid, but for a woman who works in corporate London, fear is something I suppose we live with every day. Working in a very male-dominated industry, which I had done all my life, I thought I was going to face my fear and just do what I needed to do to succeed and make myself happy. So I thought to myself, I'm going to start a business in an industry I understand and I like. So I had a few options laid in front of me, and I know my interests, and skincare has always been an interest of mine. I've always made my own products. I love making products. I advise people 24/7 about products. I have used everything usable, just literally dream it, think it, I've used it. Snail serums, pig masks, starfish creams, whatever, because I love the industry, I love products. So for me, it was almost like a no-brainer fit, because it was important for me to be able to remain self-motivated. Well, that was not enough. I think understanding an industry and educating yourself about the business you're about to go into is extremely important. And I was naive with the entry barriers, but at the same time, I wasn't stupid enough to think I knew better than those who were in the industry. So I registered myself for a course to really understand skincare and the business of skincare, because what people don't understand is you may like something as a hobby, but there's no commercial value. So I wanted to really understand the business part of skincare and the industry before I took this quote unquote leap of faith. At the same time, knowing, weighing the options that there was a risk of failure. You should always use a risk of failure, but I think failing and making mistakes is not a reason to not do something. And then understanding the different parts of the business to make a skincare business actually work. So after the course, I built myself a plan, not a massive plan. I built a plan with goals and KPIs. And the goals were really about the different pillars I knew we needed to succeed in. A very simple one is product. You have to understand your product. When you make a product, who are you going to sell your product to? How much are you going to sell it for? What kind of product is it going to be? You can hear skincare, but even with skincare, the industry is so massive, it's so vast, and there are different echelons or stratas in the market. And for you to enter a particular level in the market, you have to be quite targeted. I really understand the customer segments and the customer groups. So I did all my analysis. I created what I would call a Chiali archetype, which is a perfect Chiali woman. I went into the detail about where she will travel for holiday, who her friends will be, what stage is she in her life, what will she do for fun, is she married, is she single, does she have babies, is she a mother, is she about to get married? And I use all that data to create my product line, create my packaging, because again, you can't create a £100 product. So I'm still based in London and use very cheap packaging for it. It just doesn't align. I think your customers dictate what you give to them because they are the buyers. I know it's important for us to do things we like, but more importantly, you have to make a product that people want to buy. And skincare is easy to know people want to buy skincare because people will always buy skincare. But at the same time, you can make something nobody wants. So making something that people actually want was important to me. And then secondly, I'm a Black woman in London. I think as a Black woman in London, people assume I'm going to make a product for Black women. And it will be a simple, naughty mix of like what can be made in my kitchen. But I think for me, I wanted to make a world-class brand that could compete on the shelves in shops like Liberty and Harrods and Selfridges, Goop, and other areas, all other very important places. So in making the product, I teamed up with a few chemists and labs to really help me in making products that were good and were attractive to people who didn't look like me, people who didn't think like me, and people whose needs were slightly different to mine. Because when you focus on only yourself, you can end up making something for just you and your friends. And me and my friends were not the market. So we got the product part of the business almost on lockdown. The second thing we had to do was think of marketing. You can make a product and have nowhere to sell it to. Something important to us was to make the brand attractive to people and get our name out there. So when people, so we can start to get some traction. So when we actually launch, we don't launch into cyberspace, quote and unquote. We launch into a market of people who are expecting us. And KYALLI has been open for 5 months. We've launched for only 5 months, but I think I was quite strategic to make sure that from day zero, we already started to get some PR and marketing in terms of not advertisement. And I'll go into the difference between PR marketing and advertisement, especially for a startup brand. I wanted people to know who we are. So I thought to partner with people who are good with PR. And circling back a little bit, to start the business, I was quite intentional to know what my strengths were and what my weaknesses were. I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. And what I tried to do was to make sure I found a team of people who are very good at certain things. I worked with a branding agency. I have a head of PR who works with us at KYALLI, and I have a finance team who works with us. I also have a marketing team. So I know everybody may be thinking, oh, you have a lot of money in the bank to finance all these things. The truth is I really don't. I bootstrap, and bootstrapping really is working with what you have. So from organic sales or your savings or money you've put in the bank. So I bootstrapped the business because what I didn't want to do was throw a lot of money in and then fail at my business and then lose all the money I had. So I tried to stretch my pound, for lack of better words. I partnered with people who were exceptional in their areas, who were very, very, very good at what they did, but came at a very affordable price. And what I mean by that is there are some freelancers who have worked in some reputable agencies and companies who are happy to work with startups, charge literally 10% what you would get from bigger agencies, but because they know you don't have enough money, you don't have enough budget, they're happy to work with you as a smaller brand. I found all these people and I got them on my team to support with building my brand. Excuse me. One other thing I did was I wrote very SMART goals. So SMART being succinct, measurable, actionable, result-oriented, and targeted like goals. I did them in 6 months chunks in the sense of, I didn't write a massive goal to say, oh, in 3 months time, we'll be in Liberty, for example. Well, it's not possible because knowing the life cycle of a skincare business, you just can't do that. So I wrote very SMART goals because confidence can be a vague term. But for me, confidence is grown. Confidence is almost a muscle that you grow by setting a goal and achieving your goal. So I set goals on there and I try my best to achieve them. And I wouldn't come here and lie to anyone and say anything fanciful. That to grow confidence, you need to work very, very, very hard. I've worked in very very dynamic organizations who literally collect blood, sweat, and tears for every pound they pay you. Entrepreneurship is a very similar journey. I wouldn't say I work less hours in Boston Consulting or work less hours in EY or Barclays than I do running my own business. I work equal amounts, sometimes even more. Sometimes I barely get any sleep because it's a sacrifice I decided to make to fulfill the dreams I want. So I do write some crazy ambitions, but I plan and structure myself to get to those ambitions. I think another thing that's super important and what I've done for my business is I try to document everything we do. So take branding, for example. I think I mentioned branding quite earlier in the conversation. Take branding, for example. When I have an idea, I write it down in a book. I call my book or a digital book. I call it the KYALLI Compendium. And my KYALLI Compendium are all my ideas, everything I want the business to achieve, all my goals. I try to write structures, processes, and everything relating to my business. As the idea comes to me, I write it down and I clean it up into a document. And the reason why I do that is because I'm trying to build a brand separate from myself. If I don't codify this knowledge into something written, I can't transfer it to somebody else. Right now, we don't have any full-time staff. We work with only agencies. To keep that consistency across the different agencies we're going to work across, it's important for them to be able to pick up something and continue from where the last person left off without needing me to almost spoon feed them and spend so much time, because time is money, as they say, and it's really true. Time is money. Without needing me to spoon feed them and go through every single process. So every time I have a process, it's written down and I hand it to somebody else. So the spirit of KYALLI, essentially, our structure and our processes are all codified into different documents, and I hand it to anybody who wants to work with us. And I find that a very easy and great way of working. Another thing is, I said before, I think I said it in passing, is money. I'm just conscious of time. I know I don't have that much longer before I give the next speaker a chance to speak. The next thing is money. As I said, I stretch my pound. I don't believe in having too much money at the start. It can lead to wasting. A business should be organic and you should test your business, unless you're running a tech business and you need to hire so many people or you need a massive investment up front. I run an organic business. I run a quote unquote a trader style business where I give you a product to give me your money and we continue with that exchange. So I created a small amount of products to test my market. When I sold out on everything, I decided, okay, we need to raise more money or we need to get money to sort of expand our practice. However, I just made sure that with the money I had, I was quite wise or prudent, I suppose is the word, in budgeting in a very strict manner, just so I don't waste. And I'll give a very simple example. I prefer to read books. I prefer to read and get free information online. Only when I can't find something online do I go and pay for a webinar. We're in an information age, lots of things are free. And I learned the hard way when, as soon as I started my business, I paid for a course. It cost me a few thousand. I paid for a course. And after the course, I realized I had learned nothing. There was nothing I had gained from that course. I hadn't read in books. I hadn't seen online. I hadn't gotten from the subscriptions or the industry subscriptions or newsletters I receive on a daily basis. I try my best to be up to date with trends, and I do read quite a bit to get as much information as possible, again, because I have a very limited budget. So I spend my time getting a lot of information and self-training myself. So I don't spend on things like webinars. I don't spend frivolously. I just literally put my head down and do the work. One thing I also do in terms of getting my confidence is, although I delegate to agencies and delegate to people, I still get involved as much as possible in every single part of my business, only because I find that sometimes when you're not involved or you don't know what is happening, you can be quite blindsided. And if an issue arises, it'll be hard for you to firefight/resolve the issue. So when I'm involved in the different parts of the business, I am able to make better decisions and push things in the direction I want things to be pushed at. And then I can measure. So I have KPIs, key performance indicators, to measure our success against the goals I set either in the month, a few months before, or even within the weeks as we're progressing. I think that's most of what I wanted to discuss about. I suppose one other thing I think is very important for people to know about is quality and growth. In an Instagram age, or an age where people sell so many services, everyone is a consultant these days. Everyone is trying to tell you, give you a get rich in 5 days solution or potion. From my humble opinion, and again, I'm still very new in business, I don't buy into these fads. And I give simple examples. So the people, you hear that, oh, Glossier is a brand new business and they're valued at billions of dollars already. What they don't tell you is, Emily White spent 10 years building her customer base. She spent 10 years building content. She spent 10 years doing her analysis. She spent 10 years doing her research. She spent 10 years, and then she built Glossier. And she's riding on what she built over a 10-year period. I don't know how many women online watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I will be honest and say I watched the show, or I used to watch the show a lot more in the past than now. Start with what you have. Don't compare yourself to other businesses. Don't compare yourself to other people. When Keeping Up with the Kardashians started 15 years ago, 20 maybe, I really don't know. If you remember, or go on YouTube and have a quick look at the house they were living in, at the content, even Kim's makeup, the hair and makeup, the wardrobe, you cannot compare it to where they are now. Every business has a starting point. Give yourself some grace, cut yourself some slack. And some days you will have amazing sales, some days it may be as quiet and you will hear crickets. Just continue, just keep pushing on, just keep hustling, because one day you'll get to where you need to get to, but these things take time. So don't be too swayed by trying to pay for potions or pay for get rich quick schemes that promise you 100,000 followers or make £1 million in 2 days. Things don't really work like that. I think, and it's a lot better for you to get organic feedback on organic growth, so you can actually measure the growth of your business. It's a lot better, I think, that way than jumping into the deep end. And finally, I'll end with this. If you're not sure, when you're building your brand story or your business story, it's good to have something called industry mentors. We talk about mentors. I think it's a word that is thrown about quite frivolously. And people will say, well, I don't know anyone. I don't have any mentors. As I said earlier, my background is corporate consulting. I didn't have any mentors in business. What I did was I found 3 or 4 brands I absolutely loved, and I mirrored myself after them. I studied their packaging, and my mother and I had a very interesting conversation. She said, mirror yourself after people who have spent the millions in investment to understand the market. If you copy their model, it will save you from making some expensive mistakes as an early stage business. For example, in luxury skincare, there's a reason why the tubs are a certain size. When I started my business, I was thinking, why is it so small? No, it has to be massive. People want big products. I'll make massive products. For scaling a business, it's extremely expensive. It's almost impossible to do that. When I saw the big businesses making products in smaller tubs, I almost challenged the thought process. When I went and did my analysis, I understood the wisdom of why they were doing it. So even when you're looking for a model or trying to create your business, research the guys who have gone there before you. Use the wisdom and the information that they've put out there. The devil is in the details, so don't ignore the little things that businesses have put out there. And sometimes, even when you don't know your story or what you stand for, if you have a business that you love, be confident to say, I'm trying to be like X person. And I'll end with this. I don't know how many people know about Paystack. So Paystack is co-founded by a guy called Chiali Archetype. And I was following Paystack quite closely, I think it was last year. And I watched their first pitch to Y Combinator. And when I watched the pitch, I thought, wow, he sounded very genuine. He gave them everything he had, which was not that much. And one thing he kept saying was, I want to have a business like Stripe. I want to be like Stripe. He couldn't articulate his business model in the most finesse way, I suppose. He couldn't articulate it properly, but he knew exactly who he wanted to be like. And what he wanted to be like was Stripe. So in every conversation, in every presentation, in every webinar, that was a common theme and common trend that he'd always said. And last year, I don't know if everybody on the call knows that the company got bought out by Stripe for $200 million. So he knew who he wanted to be like. He planned himself based on their model. He copied their model. He's working extremely hard. He was working extremely hard with the limited resources he had, growing organically, not comparing himself to the bigger businesses who have massive budgets, but just doing everything he needed to do per time, giving himself small actionable goals. I can use the word small, but small doesn't have to be tiny. Small, what is small to one person may be massive to somebody else. Create goals that you can achieve per time. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. The best way to learn is through failure, because you now know what not to do. You now know what doesn't work. So don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. The worst thing you can do to yourself is not trying at all. So always try, always make mistakes. And I dare say fail. Failure is not a dirty word. We're in a time and space where people try and make it seem like people get things right the first time, things are perfect the first time. I'll tell you for a fact, it is a lie. Even when kids try to walk, they fall down a few times, but they persevere, they continue. So even in your failure, even when you can't see the end, start with what you have. Make sure you continue. Make sure you're the hardest working person in the room. Set goals that you can achieve. Do a business that you can be self-motivated with. The entrepreneurial journey is a very lonely journey. Being a Black entrepreneur in London, I know how lonely it can be, especially of Nigerian descent. All my friends work in the city and they're all flourishing in their careers. So I know it can be lonely because the journey for me is lonely, but I'm working in a place where I'm self-motivated. And learn as much as you can. Learn about finance, learn about branding, learn about PR, learn about HR, learn about process, logistics, operations, learn about distribution, and find people who know more than you in certain places. Know your strengths, play on your strengths, and then know your weaknesses and find people, affordable people who are exceptional at what they do. The cheapest isn't necessarily the best. So get people who are really good at what they do that you can afford, and then grow organically and grow slowly. In terms of goodwill, so there are two kinds of capital. There's the financial capital and then there's social capital. Everyone has social capital and goodwill, where as you go through life, you will learn and you will earn goodwill and social capital. I will say, don't be frivolous in spending both types of forms of capital. Don't be frivolous with your money, and don't be frivolous with your social capital. When you don't need a favor, don't ask for a favor, just do it yourself. Just so when you actually need the favor, you can spend your social capital or spend your goodwill, and you can get the highest return on that investment. So be quite prudent with yourself, be quite calculated, make calculated risks. It's important to make risks, but take risks. Don't be afraid to fail. Failure is not a dirty word. I wouldn't say everybody gets it right the first time. Don't be afraid to fail, and don't expect to figure everything out at the beginning. Sometimes what I find is until you do what's on your to-do list, you don't get inspiration for the next to-do list. So finish what's on your list, and then you have clarity in your mind, your spirit, and in your soul to do the next 10 things. So it's a journey, it's a marathon. Take things slow, be easy on yourself. But if you do these things and you're not afraid to fail, knowing that you will probably fail and make mistakes on your journey, then the sky will definitely be your limit. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them down, or let IJ know, and I'll be happy to answer. But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Onyenor. So we'll have questions after Adesuwa is done talking. So I'll just quickly introduce Adesuwa and then we'll hear from her. Adesuwa Okunbo Rhodes is the founder and managing partner of Aruwa Capital Management, one of the few women-owned and led private equity funds in Africa. investing into untapped investment opportunities in West Africa in the small to lower mid markets. She has over 12 years of investment banking and private equity experience from top global institutions. Prior to funding Aruwa Capital, she spent 5 years as managing partner of Synthesis Capital Africa, a provider of growth capital to SMEs in Nigeria and across sub-Saharan Africa. Prior to that, she was in the leverage finance and M&A teams at JP Morgan in London, where she was involved in $5.6 billion worth of transactions across $5.6 billion worth of transactions across emerging markets, including Nigeria. Prior to JP Morgan, Adesuwa worked in Africa-focused PE fund, TLG Capital, as an investment professional, involved in transactions across Anglophone Africa, including a very successful investment in Uganda, where she personally invested and generated a very attractive return, which enabled her to launch her own investment fund. She was named as an agent of impact in 2019 by Impact Alpha, and also recognized as one of the top 35 women moving Africa forward for her commitment to gender equality in private equity and across the society through Aruwa Capital's investments. She started her career at Lehman Brothers and holds a BSc in economics from the University of Bristol. She currently sits on a number of boards in Nigeria across agriculture, manufacturing, and hospitality sectors. She's married with a son and enjoys cooking and traveling. Hi, Adesuwa.
Hi, IJ. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the kind introduction. So how do you want to do this? Should I just give a little bit of background on me and Aruwa, and then kind of give some tips on how to kind of start and run a business? Would that be a good way to go?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, great. So hi everyone. Thanks again, IJ, for having me. In terms of my kind of journey and background, as IJ mentioned, spent the last 12 years in finance, in investment banking, and in private equity. And during my time at JP Morgan, had the opportunity to do something a little bit more entrepreneurial. So I got headhunted by a European fund called Synthesis Capital. They had about $300 million under management at the time. And they essentially headhunted me from JP Morgan to help them set up in Africa. So, set up the Lagos office. We were on the road for a fund to invest in Africa. And I did that for about four years as the managing partner, really using my local relationships to leverage fundraising, to leverage, origination of deals and execution. And maybe take a step back. Prior to JP Morgan, I was at TLG Capital as an investment professional, investing in Anglophone Africa, and it was really during my time there that I saw the intersection that you can have on the African continent, where you can use your skills and track record to make investments and make an attractive return from those investments, but at the same time do good and make an impact in society. So during my time at TLG, I invested I wasn't an entrepreneur then, so I had some money. So I invested just under $100,000 of my money in the business, and made a very attractive return over 3.5 times my money. But at the same time, I was able to see the impact that had in Uganda, where we invested in a local manufacturer of anti-malaria and antiretroviral drugs. They were able to increase their capacity, providing affordable, genuine medicines to the society, but also being able to export it across East Africa. So when I kind of completed that investment and saw the impact, I thought, I would want to do something one day in Nigeria where I can have that kind of seamless intersection between profit and purpose. So, when I got the call from Synthesis, it was a no-brainer. It was, this was a chance to go and do something, back home, where I could use my skills, use my track record to make investments, but also, you know, have an impact in society and do good. But anyway, did that for about 4 years as the managing partner, and looked around and thought, you know, we are the ones doing a lot of the work here in the hot sun in Lagos, but we don't own any economics in the GP. You know, we don't own any equity in the company, which doesn't quite make sense. And I looked around, you know, at other private equity funds on the continent, and I didn't really see many African women-owned or African women-led private equity funds on the continent. And I thought, well, the reason that a lot of women don't have access to capital is because we don't actually have a lot of women writing checks themselves, and we don't have a lot of African women in decision-making roles. So anyway, the long story short, I put my money together, you know, my JP Morgan bonuses from back in the day that I miss on some days, and you know, exited my investments, and I bought the business that I'd helped build over the last 4 years, and I rebranded it to Aruwa Capital Management in July 2019, and kind of completed the spin out of that of my old fund. And the reason that I did that was, you know, I really wanted to showcase to investors that investing in women is there is a huge untapped potential when you invest in women. There's a huge untapped potential when you invest for women. There's a very natural trickle down effect when women like myself are capital allocators. There's a natural trickle down effect to women in our portfolios. So with Aruwa, our investment thesis is investing in businesses that are rapidly growing, have proven their business model, but in line with our gender lens, we want to be investing in businesses that are either providing goods and services to women, because we see that as a very, very untapped segment, or we want to be investing in businesses that have women in management, so have diverse management teams, have women active in their value chain, or have women that have founded or are leading the companies. So you know, for me, you know, when I think about my entrepreneurship journey, I think it was very, you know, I would say that it's very important to know your why. I think my why for me is wanting to use Aruwa as a case study to showcase the potential of investing in women and investing for women. I want to ensure that Aruwa can actually be closing the gender investing gap that we have on the continent. So as you think about starting your businesses, I would say that it's very, very important for any entrepreneur that's embarking on starting a business is to know your why. And what I always say is because this entrepreneurial journey is so difficult, you know, that you will have so many challenges along the way. I always advise that your why should be more than just you. Your why should have an impact on the society in some way, because I think it's knowing that what you're doing is going to help other people that will make you go through the challenges and ensure that, because you know that it's just not you, on the difficult days, you will keep going. So knowing your why and, you know, making sure that that why is bigger than you ensures some level of perseverance and some level of resilience is what I've found in my own journey. And also, I think when you're starting a business or embarking on this entrepreneurial journey, I always encourage people to leverage their networks. So, you know, friends and family, you know, when you're ideating something, when you're trying to think about, you know, raising capital for your business, I would always say leverage your Jerusalem, if that's the right way to put it, but leverage your inner networks, you know, your friends and family. It's very, very difficult. I can give a lot of statistics about how hard it is for women to raise capital in Africa. You know, we're the most enterprising female population in the world. So 1 in 4 businesses in, 1 in 4 women are starting or managing a business in Africa. We have the highest level of female entrepreneurial activity in the world. It's 4 times more than Europe. But when you compare it to the amount of capital that's coming into women, it's very, very small. So there is a huge gender funding gap. So I always say to, women that are raising capital is, get in touch with the few gender lens funds like myself that are on the continent, but also leverage your networks. Leverage your networks. There are a lot of women now active in Nigeria that are active angel investors. And I think that you have more senior professional women within law, within finance, within ex-investment bankers that are now looking at how they also give back to society and how they pay it forward for other women to succeed. So leverage your networks. It's very, very important. Know your why, and if that why can be bigger than you, it definitely helps persevere and helps you to have some level of resilience. And I think in my journey as well, I always encourage people to start small. I know that may not be something that might be something that is the sexy thing to do, but I always say, start small, because I think with every entrepreneurship journey, you should be able to celebrate wins and celebrate milestones so that it enables you to go to the next stage successfully. So start small, prove yourself, build that track record, keep your networks updated on every single thing that you're doing. And along the way, I think you'll see that, you start to become very, very visible in your area of expertise. But, try and start small is the advice that I always give people. Don't set your sights on something that where, if you know that it's not working, try and scale it back. So I think that's been my own experience is, we were on the road for $150 million fund with my previous fund. And I specifically, wanted to start smaller with Aruwa, so that, we can celebrate milestones quickly and be able to scale up based on those milestones. So I think those would be my advice, my pieces of advice from my own journey is know your why and make sure that your why is bigger than yourself, because this is a very, very difficult journey. So it ensures that you can persevere. Leverage your networks, your inner networks, to not only raise capital, but also for referrals. There are a lot of women that are investing now actively in seed and post-seed women-owned businesses. And also start small, celebrate those milestones as you go along, and it would help you scale up quicker than you think. So I'll stop there. If there's any questions, very happy to talk some more.
Yeah, okay, so if anyone has any questions, can you just send them to the Q&A box? But Adesuwa, I wanted to ask you, so what advice would you give women looking to raise capital? So based on your experience so far, helping women raise capital, what advice would you give startups who are looking to do that as well?
Yeah, so I would say, come correct, because I think a lot of people everyone wants to start something now. We've heard about Paystack, we've heard about all these fintech businesses getting very, large multiples of sales and so on. So I think come correct, know your industry, know your competitive positioning, know your numbers. I see a lot of women entrepreneurs that don't know their numbers, so don't let the side down in that way. Know your numbers. Know exactly how your solution is addressing a problem within whatever segment that you're in, and it's it's the standard stuff. It's knowing your positioning, knowing your industry, having a very, very clear vision as to how your business is going to be is going to be sustainable over the long run as well. Knowing your numbers. And being passionate about your vision. I think anyone that's starting up a business, they like to see passion come through, and they like to see, okay, well, is this person going to be here for the good and the bad days? So those are some of the things we look for in our entrepreneurs. It's being passionate, being knowledgeable, about the industry, but also having a very, very clear vision as to where they want to take the company. And then being, we ask very technical questions around numbers and margins and, sales growth, so knowing your numbers as well. I think that comes through when you're doing your pitch as well. And get to know the angel investing networks in Nigeria. We have, Rising Tide Africa, that is, I'm a member of Rising Tide Africa. We invest in a lot of seed women-owned businesses that are raising seed capital. First Check Africa just announced, which is also backing women-owned businesses at the seed level. We are obviously backing women-owned businesses, but more at the post-seed, pre-Series A level. So yeah, get to know the investors in the market that are focused on your segment as well. Reach out to people on LinkedIn. Organize Zoom calls. This is the best time to fundraise, in my opinion, because a lot of people are just sitting in their houses. So yeah, get out there, be proactive, get in touch with potential investors.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So I'm waiting for questions. But something I would like to ask is, if there was one word you would say for a female entrepreneur to run a kick-ass business, what would it be? If there was one thing.
I would say perseverance. Perseverance is needed in this as an African, an African female entrepreneur. Perseverance is needed, yeah, I think if you know your why, then it becomes easier to persevere. So yes, perseverance would be my one word.
Yeah, that's very key, actually. Thank you. Do you have anything to say?
I think Adesuwa said it perfectly well, because I definitely will have said perseverance as well. But I suppose the sister to perseverance would be tenacity. You have to just grit and just keep going. But again, similar to tenacity. So all the buzzwords you hear about, persevere, be patient, be tenacious, be resilient, they're not buzzwords, it's true. You literally have to take all these virtues and feed them into yourself to make them part of you, because they're super important. Because as Adesuwa said, it's a hard journey. It's a long journey. So these are super, super important things to have. And don't be afraid. Fear is crippling. Don't be afraid. Mistakes happen. Just move on from it.
Yeah. So following up with that, if you were to say one word that would, or something that would help people to overcome fear in business, or help women to overcome fear in business, what would that be?
I think for me, I burst Aruwa out of anger and frustration at just at just how unequal the playing field was for women when it comes to accessing capital. So I think the fear goes when you have some level of anger, and when you're very, very passionate about.
I have stuff to do, so there's no room to be angry.
Fearful, to be fearful, exactly. So when you kind of have that mission-driven ambition, and when it's coming from your stomach, then you're not fearful. You're not fearful when it's a vision that you're very passionate about.
Yeah, I love that. I always tell myself, IJ, get out of the way. There's stuff to be done. It's not about you. It's about the people who would benefit from what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
So you can't even let your fear get in the way. There's no room for that.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions? Everyone is saying you guys did really well. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Ladies,
sorry, this is a women-only call. Thank you. Do you have anything else to add?
I think the only other thing is learn as much as you can. Adesuwa was talking about knowing your numbers. If you know me well, one thing I hate is numbers. I hate numbers. I can't stand numbers. But to run a business, I have to know my numbers. I have to know the margins. I have to know my costs. I'm working in distribution and manufacturing-based business. Everything has to do with costing. I spent my entire weekend building cash flow models. I ran away from corporate finance into advisory because I hated numbers, but I'm back at square one. So don't be afraid to learn. You have to face things, take the bull by the horns, and you'll be shocked at your potential and how much you're able to accomplish when you put yourself out there and just decide to do things you never thought you were able to do.
Wow, that's amazing. And just, coming off of what you just said, it'll be a good time to also announce that Kobikam Africa, we have a finance model for entrepreneurs, and it pretty much helps you populate your cash flow, income statement, balance sheet. All you have to do is fill in an input sheet with your expenses, your cost, your income, your assets, and you have like a monthly view of your financials. It's the best thing ever. So we're launching that on Monday. So make sure you get one. Or,
Awesome.
I'll be looking out for you because you actually need it. You don't need to manually work on your cash flow.
Thank you. I'll get it from you. Thank you, AJ.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we have a question for Adesuwa here. Can you take us through your due diligence process when investing in a startup?
Sure. So we don't invest in startups. We invest post-seed. So after the startup has raised their seed capital, we're typically investing in scale-ups. I like to call them scale-ups. But our due diligence process, it's not very onerous. We like most investors, we send our due diligence questionnaires to the business about their the company, the management team, about their business model, how they make their revenue, breaking down their cost structure, also their competitive positioning in the industry, walking through their financial projections and how they're going to grow their business with our capital. We like to sometimes engage third-party market consultants as well, so to see how are regulations in that market going to change during our investment period. So we have quite a comprehensive due diligence process. It's slightly changed in this COVID world now, where we can't do all of our on-site due diligence like we used to. But it's definitely very comprehensive on the market, on the management team, on the business model, on their financials. We also sometimes do some legal due diligence as well if the company has undergone any litigation or anything like that. So yeah, it's quite comprehensive. But we also try and do most of it in-house as well, so that we're not incurring unnecessary costs for us or for the company.
Sounds good. Thank you. So to both of you, what books would you recommend on personal finance and business models?
I didn't really read many books. I was more of a hands-on work experience type of person than reading books. But yeah, I'm not the right person for books, which I'm very ashamed of. But I'm too busy.
Finance books, unfortunately, I have to agree. I don't. And for business models, I worked in consulting for a very long time, so I learned that more from experience than anything else. So if I find any, I'll send to ID to distribute to the community. But nothing from me, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would say on personal finance, I think one of the books that everyone has read at some point is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That kind of helps you break down, fully understand financing, or maybe not even financing, just personal finance in general from an everyday perspective. So I really like that book. If you haven't read it already, Vuyo. That would be one book. In terms of investing in startups, I have no idea. So one more question, and this is from Noku. I think the biggest issue for me as a person in various businesses is actually the jump. And perhaps that's from fear. Every time I have to launch a new business, I have a moment where I go through this. It can be arresting, also very frustrating.
Yeah, no, that's definitely very common. That knot in your stomach where it's the failure to fail. It's the fear to fail, I think. which everyone always has. But you know, if you just have to start, you just have to do it. You just have to keep going and don't let the fear be crippling. But it will definitely be there. But it's going through that and knowing that, you know, what you're doing will impact people, what you're doing will motivate and inspire other people. So you just have to push through the fear and don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah. I saw one quote that I find really interesting. And I think it's sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. So even when you fail, it's still, you can just look at it as a lesson. So sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. So failure is just a stepping stone to learn something new and know what to do and what not to do in the future. So yeah, I think we have all the questions. Does anyone have any other questions? You can just put it in the Q&A box.
I'll add a little one to the question on fear. So I'm not sure at what stage you joined the call. There's an assessment online called doitscare.com. I did the assessment. I didn't see myself as a fearful person, but apparently I am. But what that helps you to do is it points out, based on the questionnaires, you answer a few questions and it shows you what you're actually afraid of. I think with that targeted view of the things that cripple you, and we bucket into a broad term called fear, you'll be able to assess, analyze, and put in actions to help you tackle that fear. Because I think it's important to know what you're afraid of. It could be fear of failing, but it could be something else that you're interpreting as fear of failing. So try and do the assessment. I think it's about 3 minutes long. It's not very long, but it gives you a detailed report for the types of fear and how you could tackle the fear.
Thank you. That is so helpful. So I think I would actually check it out as well, doitscared.com, because sometimes, man, it is like that sometimes. But yeah, does anyone have any other questions? I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, ladies, so much. Thank you, Adesuwa. Thank you, Charis.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
It's been so amazing. And this is our last session. So I'll really miss you guys. And I mean everyone that has been joining over time. And yeah, take care. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good
Bye.
afternoon. Bye. Bye.